TV umpire to director, we have a player review. Can we rock and roll, please?
Here we are for episode 26 of Bits and Pieces. Like the Indian cricket team across formats, we are in action every week with a completely different cast of actors each time. And like them, we too cover multiple formats of cricket, from T20 to 660 to Hong Kong Super Sixes to women's cricket to yay, Test cricket. PS. Note that, like everyone else, we too forgot to mention ODI cricket. We have just one bit and piece of our panel from last week, and that would be myself, Nitin Sundar. The rest of the squad, again like the epic Indian cricket team, has been chopped and changed. Which brings us to the first chop. Abhishek Chopra makes his much awaited debut on the podcast today. He calls himself El Choppernos on Twitter, and the wisecracks of this epic Indian will leave you nasally impaired, like Surpanaka from the Indian epic. That is, he will chop her nose. Welcome to the pod, Chopper Nose. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Nitin. Great to be here.
Super. Moving on, we said we have a rotating cast of panelists. This podcast regular had a famous namesake in Indian cricket who was afflicted with not a rotating cast problem, but a rotator cuff problem. Back in the day, an injured Javagal Srinath was still so important to Indian cricket that he would play despite his shoulder injury and would throw the ball underarm from the deep. Well, all the talk about underarm cricket last week seems to have roused our own Srinath from hibernation, and he's back on our pod. The Jerome K. Jerome of Bits and Pieces, or should I say, the Ishan K. Ishan of this podcast. Mr. First name / last name, both are almost same. Welcome back, Srinath Sripath. How are you doing?
Wow, man! What a busy intro that was. That's like Johnny Bairstow innings in a podcast intro. Insane.
Please, sorry. There is only one Johnny Bairstow on this podcast, and that is Tony Sebastian. At best, I'm a Sam Billings. Next up, another podcast regular returns after a break. If Srinath had a rotator cuff problem, this man's cricketing namesake had other shoulder-related issues in his bowling days. But that didn't stop him from taking 800 test wickets. Dodgy elbow or not, he shouldered the burden of the Sri Lankan attack, and so too will our own Murli. The last four letters of his second name actually spell O-P-A-N, but they could well also spell O-P-E-N, since our man does open mic stand-up in Lisbon, of all places. And well, he's into a lot of wordplay, so you could also spell those letters O-P-U-N. Great to have you back, Murli Sadagopan. How are you doing?
Fabulous, man. Just hanging in here. But thank you for that fabulous intro.
Hanging in there like a night watchman, like Jack Leach, you should say. Rounding off the panel, yet another returning cast member. Our podcast has struggled big time with the Bechtel test. Blame it on the bad jokes. They've scared away most men, and it would seem all women, from our panel and perhaps from our audience. Jokes apart, it's something we intend to correct, and it's great to welcome Rachna Ramchand back to the show to shine much needed light on the women's game. Say hello, Rachna. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I, as usual, have no idea what's going on in the men's cricket world, but yeah, excited to be talking women's planning, women's cricket on this podcast.
much needed for this cast of sausages. Absolutely. There is a lot to talk about right now. We are almost exactly midway through the much awaited, long awaited fifth test of India versus England. We are bang in the middle of day 3, and Johnny Bairstow has just completed an incredible innings and gotten out, and Stuart Broad, who's not having the best of test matches, is also out. Let's go, guys. How early reactions to this test match? What has been the best part of this match? And let's start with Choppernos, who's the debutant.
I think the Shami spell yesterday was just out of this world. It's one of those spells which will probably go away from the public memory quite soon, because he hardly picked up any wickets. But I think that over to Root and in general, his bowling was just out of this world. And the others will have something to show against their names in the scoreboard for day 1, Pant and Jadeja. The Shami spell coming off after a bit of a layoff was just out of this world. And I mean, it reminded you again why you enjoy watching this team bowl, and especially bowl outside India in mildly helpful conditions. Also, they're just out of this world. Bumrah did pretty well as well, and I mean the rain breaks help with keeping them fresh. But yeah, the Shami spell with almost nothing to show for was out of this world.
Poetic justice almost that he finally came back to get Johnny Bairstow out, right? He could have
And
had him.
Kohli was the one who took the catch after all the friendship and the fourship and the friendship again.
Bumrah, of course, got a lot of early wickets. And we'll talk about England's batting. What was Ben Stokes doing, guys? What was that? It looked like he was just trying to blast every single ball out of the ground. And things weren't working out and eventually got out. He could have gotten out any number of times. Dropped once, dropped twice, and then incredible catch from Bumrah to end that innings. And he went away with a smile. I guess that's what BazBall is all about.
One of the key things was everybody kept saying the same thing about Pant at one point of time. He's going after every ball's gonna be skied. Stokes was the guy who could bat 300 balls. He had the kind of skill and ability to bat through and let balls go. He became what Pant used to be 2 years ago. Today was one of the worst innings. Like Shardul Thakur would have been ashamed if he had played like that. It was a disastrous innings for Stokes. He gave so many chances. Horrible fielding, of course, but worst thing I've seen in a long time.
Best part is he went away with a smile. That's the part that gets me.
Vibes and vibes only. Yeah, that sums up the McCullum era, right? Like, I don't know, man. Stokes seems very confusing for me. Like, he became this whole, almost like this all-time great test batsman, completely changing his style of play. Like, he could defend, like Murli mentioned rightly, 300 balls at a stretch and whatever. Now he's like, as a captain, I think he wants to build his own identity for his team or whatever. Like, he's out bigging up guys who are completely out of form, like Zach Crawley. He's saying getting out like this is part of the game and part of the philosophy. Like, I don't understand, because while it works, it's great, right? But like Kohli rightly pointed out yesterday to Bairstow, little bit faster than Saudi. Yeah? That's what's happening, right? Like, that's what's happening in this test match. It's a bit harder than beating up New Zealand, as much as it pains me to say it. Like, it's just like you bashed around three fast bowlers who are not at the peak of their powers. Obviously, Jamieson was good for a bit, but like Saudi bowled, Wagner not at their best. Bairstow had fun. Stokes had fun. I know Root did well as well. Like, now they're back to facing probably the top or the second best bowling attack going around in the world. So I don't know. Stokes is confusing me a lot.
The one reaction I had to that was you said, he's been backing players who are out of form. Zach Crawley's case, he's not out of form. He's out of form in the sense he's out of shape. He's out of place. What is that guy doing in the test level? He averages some mid-20 something. I almost feel the reason Stokes and co are playing this way is England have a top order that doesn't work. The tail is pretty long as well. I think all the runs they get needs to come from those three guys in the middle, right? Root, Bairstow and Stokes. And they believe that their best option, especially against this Indian attack, which is always at your throat, is when the ball is a little soft, right? Somewhere in the middle overs. And they believe they need to get their runs very fast. It's something they did against New Zealand as well. They were going after the bowling, especially, after the top order fails. And maybe that's what the approach is all about, right? And it's all bravado in the name of BazBall, but actually it is probably just practical. How else do you score runs against this Indian fast bowling attack?
Not the way you play like Zach Crawley, for sure. I don't know, some of you get Sky Sports commentary. There's this beautiful thing they mentioned, right? Zach Crawley is not even the top 10 run getters in Kent. Like, he did not even feature in that list. They were like, how did he get picked in the England cricket team for him to consistently come and fish outside off? And even with what Stokes is doing, the whole persona thing, apparently he walked into a game in Durham and hit 17 sixes before lunch or something. And they were like, it's trying to establish a personality. I don't know if that's what cricket is. Is it like stand-up comedy where suddenly you're like, I'm a different persona. I play like Greenwich today. Tomorrow I'll play like Tendulkar. I don't know. You just play like yourself, right? It was crazy to watch.
Yeah, I think Ben Stokes reminded me of Shahid Afridi today. I mean, Ben Lala Stokes or something. Given how he was batting, and I think if Hema Malini saw Zach Crawley bat, she would call him Kent Deta hai sabse ashuddh pani.
I knew this was heading somewhere crazy.
That's the whole Rob Key philosophy, man. Rob Key is also famously from Kent, so there's a lot going on there with Hema Malini.
That's what seems to happen. England used to have some sort of a strategy which was, locked up, and then somebody robbed the key. And Brendan McCullum has unleashed mayhem. They're 9 down now, and India potentially looking at a pretty sizable lead here, but there would be third innings jitters when they come out to bat.
So one thing that I think needs to be said about BazBall and Bairstow in particular is that we thought he would, go all guns blazing right from ball 1 or 10 or something like that. But I think he really put his head down yesterday, a few close shaves. But the way he put his head down and made sure that he survived that early onslaught by the on some soft ball, loose bowling today was quite something to see. So maybe there's a method to the madness. I think the others so far are just doing the madness bit and not the method bit. So let's see how it pans out, and especially in slightly more difficult and alien conditions to bat for them.
No, fully agreed. But yeah, we should talk about India's batting effort that preceded this, and thoughts, guys, about Rishabh Pant's innings and what it really did, the way he went about scoring his runs, and equally Ravindra Jadeja's innings as well, right? Like chalk and cheese, but they just came together so beautifully on day one.
With Pant and this whole warm-up game, and there's some little bit of questions about how he would be straight back into the test arena and so on. I thought he played a really solid innings in the sense that he wasn't loose for any prolonged period. I thought he judged really, really well. And I mean, there were plenty of loose balls and stuff, but I thought he was patient enough to wait for Jack Leach. Obviously, BazBall meant Jack Leach was given a nice 9 or 10 over spell on day one, which meant he could go at 8 or 9 an over, right? So that kind of changed everything for them.
I thought they had a better chance with Joe Root. Like, they could have given Joe Root like the second or third over itself, because they knew this guy was going to swing, and this guy he was going after everybody, and it wasn't like, I mean, yes, Sydney and Gabba, but even there he took chances that could have been, pretty dangerous. They could have been out. But this time I could see none of those. When he walked down the pitch to Anderson and thwacked him, Anderson felt a piece of him die. Like, watch the ball fly. It was crazy. This was outstanding batting.
Not many pieces of him are anyway left alive. So yeah, I think it was Usman who mentioned on polite inquiries that it was almost a sensible innings from Pant, which is almost like you're insulting Pant. But I think some of the shots that he played, some of the drives that he played through the offside, some of the flicks that he played off the spinner through the leg side, I think. Apart from all the madness that was there in the rest of the innings, those were very, very good cricket shots, and it was just a fantastic innings. And I think when you look back on his career arc, or when we do that 5-10 years later, this would be like, before this innings and after this innings would really be a phase, given how well he played on day one.
The point Murali makes is like really relevant to how this whole Stokes McCullum thing is going, right? Like there's two things. One is you want to attack, you have a strategy and you attack accordingly. And the second is I want to show that I'm attacking, so I'll just do whatever seems like the coolest thing to do, like bringing on Leach and keeping him without like any fielders in the deep so that he could attack. Fine, good to start with. But once you start getting hit, bring on Root or do something else, because even the fast bowlers had 5 slips for Pant when he was going at 45, 50. That's inexplicable to me. Like, do you want... The guy sees gaps in the field. KP was making this point earlier. He will drive you when you put 5 slips, you're just making it easy for him rather than making it harder for him. So it's just like wanting to show off that you're attacking rather than actually thinking about it and attacking. That is how it kind of came across.
Sorry, if you were watching on Sky, Srinath, I think they literally mentioned what you just said as well. They were like, oh, Stokes is still keeping him on. He's still keeping the mid-on up. He wants to challenge Pant. You're not challenging Pant. You're gifting 6 runs. That's what you're doing. He's going to come and hit you hard. And it's not even like he's going after Leach. He's going after Anderson and thumping him over mid-on and mid-off. Leach is a nobody spinning in. It was really strange. I think they were blowing and hyping up Stokes too much. Like the whole, it looked like a Telugu movie for me. I was just like, dude, Stokes isn't doing so much. There isn't as much substance to this guy.
Yeah, I think defensive captaincy in general is not something that's done very well in this day and age, given how it's been a major bowling era, so to speak. But I think there was ample opportunity for Stokes to do that, not just when Pant was going all guns blazing, but also I think on day two when Jadeja was scoring quite freely. But it's just a bit of stubbornness. I don't know about the captaincy so far. I really like him. I hope he shapes up well as a captain. But I think this test against a slightly stronger opposition compared to New Zealand has just like shown complete woolly-headedness, if I can call it that.
Right, so as we speak, England looks like they've just been bowled out. I think they're going to give
my
it out.
stream is lagging.
It's okay,
I
man.
still have an Amitabh Bachchan ad. My life is much worse. I had the previous overs not over.
Spoiled that for you. So, yeah, 284. Looks like it'll be 284 all out. The umpires are checking to see if the ball carried to slip. It is a good time to go back to the end of the Indian innings where Stuart Broad once again collected a record. I must tell you about my personal experience with Stuart Broad getting smashed around, right? So back in 2007 when Yuvraj Singh hit him for 6 sixes, I happened to be in Jaisalmer, okay? I'd gone with friends into the desert and we were actually high on certain edible substances when this thing started happening. I remember the first 3 sixes, okay, and I was just getting high as Yuvraj Singh started going after Stuart Broad. I remember the first 3 sixes seemed believable, right? And the moment the 4th six was hit, that's when I almost started asking myself, okay, is this real or am I actually imagining this, right? And at that point, I remember my friends, at least the friends who were sober, were like also quite incredulous. And I put my foot down and said, hey, now he's going to get hit for 6 sixes here. And that's exactly what played out. Yesterday, when Stuart Broad was bowling to Bumrah, I was actually driving, right? And I was driving back through Bangalore traffic. And since I can't keep my eyes off cricket, I had, I was watching the match on my phone. And it was just incredible again, right? And it was the stream was not really strong or anything. Jasprit Bumrah didn't even score 35 runs in his entire innings. But 35 runs came off this over, and all the headlines seem to be saying that, Bumrah took 35 off Broad, which itself is confusing. It was just quite surreal to watch. Rachna, I know that you watched this. Please come in.
I'm still astounded. So in the past 6 months, I've seen exactly 1 hour of men's cricket. So yesterday I was at a family friend's place and they watch cricket all the time. I go to the living room. I see, Ravindra Jadeja's 92 runs. He's not scored a century before. Let me just see, how this plays out. And I have the BCCI app, and so I knew before he hit the century when he was on 96 on TV that he was hitting the century. So great. And then Bumrah comes in, and that over I was just stunned by. And the one reaction I had after that over was, is this what usually happens in cricket? Is this what usually happens in test cricket, in men's cricket? What am I missing out? Should I start watching men's cricket again and go back on all my ridiculous principles? So that was basically my reaction. And yeah, I'd seen the Stuart Broad, Yuvraj Singh spectacle many years ago, and I was like, is this what is this a coincidence? What is going on here?
If you thought you could bet on that Leicester City winning the EPL thing, a lot of people do sports betting on how many runs this over. 0 people would have bet on 35 runs from Bumrah in that over, man. And Bumrah himself, I think 4 runs came off the middle of the bat, or I think 6 runs, right? Everything. Let's not lie about it. I think 6 runs came off the middle of the bat.
Actually,
everything else came off. 10 runs came,
10 runs, yeah.
The one down, long on, the one big hit. Apart from that, everything else flew off. Broad himself, he bowled the ball at all angles, all trajectories, in all parts. If he could dig the ground with the ball, he'd have tried, because he had no clue what he was doing. And 35 runs was completely deserved for that guy.
2 separate thoughts. This morning at the preview show on Sky, Atherton was taking Mark Butcher's case, which was hilarious because Butcher did the toss and he mentioned that no fast bowler had captained India, and Bumrah said, of course, Kapil Dev's captained. And then Butcher said, no, Kapil Dev's an all-rounder. And then Atherton said, look what you've done. You've turned Bumrah into an all-rounder in 2 days. But he's smashing Stuart Broad. And Shaz was just laughing out loud because he was just sitting there watching all the fun and these guys taking each other's kiss. The second thing is, do you guys know which bowler jointly held the record before Stuart Broad? Like, there's 2 or 3 others. Do you know which? Yeah.
Jimmy Anderson, of course. If you play long enough, right? If you play as long as Anderson and Broad have played, you collect all sorts of records. So it's only fitting that they have the most wickets by fast bowlers, but they also are at the top of this ignominious list. Great to watch.
Yeah. Now they're calling for Broad's ODI comeback so he can complete the trifecta, right? That's how hilarious this is.
You also need to get a Punjabi Indian cricketer to come and face him and get the record, right? I mean, Yuvraj and then Bumrah. I wonder who will take the one-day record. Shubman Gill. Absolutely, right.
Even today, I think there was an Anderson interview, which I didn't watch. I think it was on Sky, but Anderson actually mentioned how the plan to go short against Bumrah after that exact same plan having failed so badly a few tests ago in this series or a few months ago in this series. That plan had failed so badly and Stokes wanted to try the exact same thing again. And I mean, Broad stuck to the task that his captain had assigned. And it's just amazing how they don't understand that the best way to get tailenders out is full and straight. And I think while the rest of the shots were partly lucky and partly good batting by Bumrah, whatever, there has to be a special mention for that last 6, which was a proper shot. And I think a lot of people compared it to some of the shots in
Greenwich.
175.
Gordon Greenwich, yeah.
175. Natraj. No. So,
Right.
Yeah, all-rounder. Everything just synced together nicely for that comparison. Yeah.
Indian batsmen typically never play the hook shot, right? So to see him play that shot and the way it was just total style here. The way he hit that 6 was just incredible. There's no other word for it. Also wanted to say there was this callback to 2007. Even in 2007, Broad goes round the wicket for the 4th ball, if I remember right. and you know it is going Piaget from there, right? That's it.
It's almost like they thought Bumrah was as bad as Shreyas Iyer against the short ball, right? Like that's what they did. Went all out.
Yeah. And England just asked for these jokes. I was doing some research on who was sharing the most runs along with Anderson. Do you know it was Joe Root and he got hit by Keshav Maharaj for 28 runs in an over?
I would have thought it's the other way around, right? Like Root hitting Maharaj, but it's not.
I really read that twice and I was like, no, Maharaj hit Root for 28 runs. Like he truly was the Maharaj in that over. England is just hilarious.
So wait, so Anderson, Root and Broad all are at the top of this table?
Yes, shared honours.
And there's what, Robin Peterson of South Africa?
Of course. That's very memorable. Yeah.
Yeah. And then shared with Anderson and Root at 28. Of course, Harbhajan Singh is there, got whacked by Afridi for 27. And then the list just goes worse after that.
I think the 8-over ball record in first-class cricket is also some 28-29 runs, if I remember correctly. I'll have to check that.
Of course, the argument. Bats were small. It was very hard. People were weaker, older back then. Now they are younger. All that.
Back then, bats were small, but now Pant is blue. Sorry. Call back to earlier podcast joke. But Harbhajan Singh on that list, I don't know if you guys remember which test match this was. This was the famous Kaun Hai Vinu Mankad test match where Sehwag and Dravid had that big opening stand. I remember Afridi went after Harbhajan with a vengeance in that test. Some of those sixes still haven't landed anywhere near Gaddafi Stadium. I'm sure they're still flying. Yeah. Memorable days. But yeah, it's always nice to see English fast bowlers being given.
Some of them, I think, went as far as actual Gaddafi fellow.
Quiz question, guys. How many people have captained India in the last 12 months?
8.
7.
6, right?
Do you include DK over the weekend?
Then no.
For
Then
fun,
7.
let's include DK. Absolutely.
Okay, 8.
Just to give a different number, I'll give 9.
I actually think 9 is the right answer, by the way. I think 9 is the right answer because
Wow.
I tried to count this out, right? So obviously there is DK, there is Hardik Pandya, sorry. There is Jasprit Bumrah, there is Rishabh Pant, there is KL Rahul, Rohit Sharma, Virat Kohli. So that's already 7.
Just because I can do this, I'll add Harmanpreet and Smriti and
There you
get
go.
Rachna to do a double take.
Good one, good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, then you're going to go into 11. Yeah. There's also Shikhar Dhawan, whose name I forgot to mention when I was doing the rundown. So that actually is 8 men already.
He captained India.
Yes, in Sri Lanka.
In Sri Lanka, no?
Oh,
Yeah, in Sri
yes.
Lanka.
I'm wondering when he played also. Wow, okay, yeah.
We
right.
forgot about him, like we always do.
So yeah, it's everyone's had a go, guys. Everyone's had a go, and it's a team full of captains now. Anyone had a chance to see what Dinesh Karthik's captaincy was like? I don't think that match aired anywhere. Believe it was an
No,
easy
it was
win
on.
for India.
It was on YouTube, Derbyshire YouTube. I didn't watch it, but it had like 4 sponsors for a tour match, which is amazing, right? Like, this is the one time like counties have rights to stream stuff. So I think it was something like I forget the name. It's some local real estate brand with some local video production brand, like something. Yeah.
You're not talking about Lodha Group, right? Because
No, yeah, which is local in Birmingham by the looks of it. I don't know what's going on.
Dinesh Karthik obviously had an easy captaincy debut in an unofficial game. I think that's also a signal from the powers that be that Dinesh Karthik is very much has to be in the starting 11 of some T20 team here at some point, right? And not be on the fringes of World Cup selection. But let's go back a week when India were playing Ireland in a 2-match series, which they nearly did not win. Hardik Pandya was the captain there. Thoughts, guys? India could nearly did not defend 200 and whatever 15 odd
21
total.
Yeah, yeah.
221 against a really weak Ireland team. And this is the powers of the IPL. The powerful bowling unit, which was grooved in the IPL, was not able to defend, nearly not able to defend that target. Yeah.
I didn't watch a lot of this, but the best moment of the series, most hilarious, was I was actually tuning into Sony for a bit, watching the post-match show. Sabah Karim was doing it. There's Harry Tector and Lorcan Tucker, right? I saw Sabah Karim say Harry Tucker 12 times, and I think there was an Irish host who couldn't stand it, but he didn't say anything because it's a former Indian cricketer who's and the Irish guy seemed to have been in Malad and not in Malahide, so.
I'm sure Sabah Karim was not mispronouncing names with any malafide intentions. It was just Malahide. Oh, Shubman Gill is gone. 4 for 1.
Nitin Sundar, you should not do this to us. You're subjecting us to the horror of having to wait to see this happen.
Sorry, man. I'll stop doing this. Yeah.
But and it's normal for Indian fans. We know it's going to happen. We don't want this premonition to come and hurt us more.
Well, so Ireland, Tector and Tucker and whatnot, right, nearly created tectonic shifts in cricket's power game by almost bringing India down in that game.
Was Shikhar Dhawan not in this squad anymore? What happened?
ODIs. He's playing the ODIs against England.
Okay. I'm very confused about that man's career. Like, I really worry about him a lot.
No, that's the problem, right? Shikhar Dhawan, wrong place, wrong time. If he was in the 90s, he would have played 400 ODIs for sure because he's specialist ODI cricketer, right? No test career, would have been fit all the time to play one-dayers. India actually didn't have that sort of a player, right? Back then in the top order. You had your Pant-Jadeja, but he was more of a middle order batsman. And the top order, people used to play both formats, right? This guy would have raked it in back then. India, they played, I think, 6 ODIs or something in the last 12 months, and most of them with third string teams in Sri Lanka, in South Africa. It's an afterthought. Whenever an ODI, but they call that guy, he plays he plays one day cricket. So yeah, he's back in the squad. He'll probably be the captain also next time they play. Talking of captains, there is this famous picture from the 2019 World Cup with all the captains, right? You had Virat Kohli sitting like a boss on an armchair. You had Kane Williamson standing like the minister next to the king, next to Virat, and you had all the other captains. Now, there is a new version of that picture which has been released, and this one is partly in black and white and partly in color. The only 2 captains still in colour happen to be Kane Williamson and Aaron Finch, because all the other captains from the 2019 World Cup are not captains anymore. And we still have, I think, over a year to go for the One Day World Cup. And times have changed, right? Back in the 90s again, you had captains, have reigns of entire decades, in some cases more than that. But captaincy seems to be a poison chalice in the 2020s.
I think at that one point of time, it was just like if you played really good cricket, they just assumed you're a captain. It was really, I felt like that was sort of the going, right? You scored runs, captain. You get wickets, you're captain. It's because they automatically connect that to awareness of the game. But I think there was a number of times we've heard, they are stepping down from captaincy because it's affecting the burdens of batting or affecting the burdens of bowling or whatever. I think now it's changing significantly. Of course, Root is still an anomaly, but it's not supposed to. I don't think it should bear you down in a manner in which whatever you have generally come to, which is batting or bowling or whatever all-rounder, you should be good at that too. Unfortunately, it's very few. I think Kane is an exception. He's doing really well, but many of the others definitely seem to struggle under the burdens of captaincy. They're like, if they're captaining, their form definitely seems to dip.
Ironically, I think among all these guys, Finch has probably had the longest run without like any kind of form, right? Like that's probably the odd thing about it. Speaking of, Eoin Morgan called it quits this week. I think just like double duck in Amstelveen later, he's just called it quits. I don't know how we feel about it, but like the one thing I will say is England's white ball cricket is unrecognizable from how it was for the rest of our lifetimes before 2015, right? Like for 40, 50 years in ODIs and 20 years of our lifetimes. I just don't want to sound like a 50-year-old. So it's just like England were playing cricket from a different century, and the guy has basically done everything to turn it around. So worth a shout out.
And after his efforts, now they're playing Test cricket the same way as well. So, which is what BazBall is all about. And Eoin Morgan, famously Brendan McCullum's first disciple, and the seeds for England's resurgence were apparently sowed in KKR, which is where Morgan and McCullum spent some time together. I don't know if I'm making all of this up, but I believe I read this somewhere.
Yeah, there's more also. I think McCullum's wedding, Morgan was the best man, or the other way around. They're really close.
I think Morgan was also inspired by what he saw of McCullum in New Zealand in 2015 when they reached the finals.
Yeah, when England got thrashed, by the way, like they played like yeah.
they played the right 96 World Cup template in 2015.
Yeah, and the OG BazBall got them.
Yeah, pretty much. But Morgan, lots of ducks in the recent time. And in fact, I wonder why he wasn't pushed for so long. I think they gave him a really, really long rope, and I think he ultimately decided to jump before he was pushed. Not good tidings for Aaron Finch, because you win a World Cup and then you get you're on your way out soon after. That's what has happened to Eoin Morgan. Aaron Finch won the World Cup, the T20 World Cup last year. So yeah, let's see how long he lasts. He's not been scoring any runs either.
I have a very weird kind of admiration for Eoin Morgan. He's one of those captains I find who hardly does the alpha captain perception at all. Like, he's very behind the scenes, right? Whenever you can see a Dhoni or a Kohli or Smith or Ponting or anybody, they are captain. With Eoin Morgan, he's gone off the field, you won't even notice. Like, you won't know, because he's very going about his tasks very, very quietly and super calm demeanor. But yeah, he's done a lot of good for England cricket. Like, it's watchable today thanks to that man.
Yeah, you don't notice Morgan when he's Eoin or when he's not.
So yeah, the thing I like about Eoin Morgan is how his captaincy really brought about a team which was a true representation of what had become of Britain, in the sense that it was truly multi-religious, multicultural, etc., and players who perhaps felt on the sidelines in white ball cricket, like Adil and Moin, etc., felt really safe under his captaincy and said so much in so many words. I think it was fairly important for the English team to have someone like Eoin Morgan at the top, especially with whatever has been going on in Yorkshire and certain other parts of their first-class cricket.
I have a so on the point of captains, I think it's fair that we give Mithali Raj a special mention.
Oh, yes.
She retired just a few weeks ago. And also, when we're talking about stable captains, again, Mithali Raj, 2005 was when she became the captain, took India to the finals, that World Cup, took India to the finals in 2017. And yeah, Harmanpreet Kaur has been doing a good job in this Sri Lanka series, even though we lost the last T20. But again, that I think more kudos to the Sri Lanka team for that. We've also had Deepti Sharma in the middle playing captain for one match when it was when they dropped Harmanpreet Kaur, debatable whether it was cause of an injury or whether she was just not performing at the beginning of the year. But I have a sense that it's going to be stable for a while at least.
Wow! If you add the women, then we are up to 13 captains. I've lost count at this point in time, but yeah, insane.
While you're on Mithali Raj, Rachna, I have to ask, do you think she had the decline, the whole Tendulkarish decline, she should have gone before? People don't really talk about it, but because she was also an important captain and an important part of the women's cricket movement, but did she have the whole decline like they talked about?
So if you look at her stats, I wouldn't say she had a conventional decline. I think she averaged 50 plus in the last, at least in the past year or so for all the ODIs she's been playing. It's been a very consistent record. But I think the challenge has been her strike rate. And she hasn't been able to keep up with the new bench of players, whether it's India or internationally. Her strike rate is still at 66. But I think it's a broader question about our overall performance and what is working in terms of lineups. Definitely, we have a strong batting lineup. There lacks consistency in playing. I think we've been doing better against the Sri Lanka series, though again, we all know that Sri Lanka is a much weaker side than us. And bowling, of course, has been a big question mark for a while. We have not been able to develop fast bowlers in women's cricket compared to England, Australia, and New Zealand as well. So yeah, this is where I think. So I don't know if I would say that Mithali Raj had a standard decline, but I do think that in terms of if you compare her to other cricketers internationally, her style of playing did not work.
I think just on the longevity point, Rachna, she's been around for 20 years. There's a certain reason why ODIs were her best format, because she could play pretty much copybook. She could last for pretty much the 50 overs, and then you'd build a total which was early 200s or mid 200s. 250 was a really good total back in the day. And then as the game evolved and you started getting power hitters, 250 plus became pretty normal in ODI cricket, and Raj wasn't able to keep pace with it towards the end, which caused her to go out of the T20 squad first. But the one sort of difference from Tendulkar to Mithali, just if you're doing that parallel, is her fielding became a big question mark towards the end. Australia and England literally used to dab it to her and take really quick singles and kind of use her fielding positions as a reason to score really, really quickly. And Ramesh Pawar and her during that face-off and all of that was basically the fielding that got her benched. Wasn't she benched for that World Cup semi-final? Rachna, if I'm not wrong, in West Indies. So that's kind of where it began.
I know we compare Mithali's decline a bit to Tendulkar's, right? But Tendulkar really didn't have such a sharp or such a prolonged decline either, because he kept coming back, right? After injuries.
Yeah.
Of course, the last 1 year or so was bad. In fact, the analogy that I would draw is more with an MS Dhoni, where you had a prolonged period where the batting, the strike rate especially became a big question mark. And I was listening to this podcast featuring Ayaz Memon, don't ask me why, Ayaz Memon and Cyrus Broacha, which is an interesting combination for a podcast, where they were talking about this, right? And why did Mithali get such a long rope? And Ayaz Memon made this point. I don't know how accurate it is, but his point was there wasn't enough talent to actually challenge her, right, in the sidelines. He also believes that is now changing in Indian women's cricket. You have a lot more talented players coming along, so you might not see this happening the next time, a player goes through, an older player goes through decline. Of course, Mithali is a legend and obviously had the pull, and we generally don't let our legends go easy. So all of that also played into it.
Before we move on from Mithali though, Rachna, please tell me what your thoughts are on Shabash Mittu.
Well, one thing I'll say is that we definitely need to do a review of it in the next 12 days. Or after it releases at least. I am excited about it. They actually shot it, if I'm not mistaken, during the 2019 World Cup at Lord's, and that I think itself is so impressive when it comes to women's cricket. And them getting that and this was a time where women's cricket was on the rise, but people still weren't really talking about it. So and again, I am just very excited about it. I'm not. If you were to ask me how I feel about Julan Goswami's her movie, what's it called? Chakde? No.
Chakdaha.
Does anybody remember?
Something.
Chakda Express.
Chakda, sorry.
Something.
Wow,
Chakra
I
Express.
didn't even know there was a movie of this kind.
Anushka is making it.
Anushka Sharma is playing it.
Oh, it's not yet out. It's not yet out. Okay, got it.
It's not. Neither movies are out, and we don't know when Chakda Express is going to release. But if you hear Anushka Sharma's accent, we were talking about Indian Irish accents. I don't know how I feel about that compared to Tapsi Panna in Shabash Mittu.
Also, isn't Julan Goswami much taller? Like, I don't know if Anushka fits that bill. Like, she doesn't, at least for me, Tapsi Pannu's character looked a lot more fitting, like she could pull off a Mittu.
Yeah, and they've done really long shots, man. In the trailer, you can see how tall Julan is, which is Anushka is. But that's a really good shot. You don't feel like it is her, at least from the trailer. I don't know.
This goes back to the problem where you want a star to play these roles, and yeah, obviously Bollywood doesn't have stars of Julan Goswami's height, and that's just sad reality.
But I'm glad those movies are coming out. Like, I'm just as excited to see how they're going to project these stories on screen. And for all because they love drama and macho male, like somehow he pulled magical things out of nothing. I hope they do the same things out of these women's movies too. Like, it should really have that drama piece, and then just out of nowhere one crazy climactic ending. For sure, there's a love story somewhere in the middle.
Oh my God, Murali.
If there is a love story, I am going to be in complete shock, because I don't know if you've heard, but Mithali Raj has put out statements saying that she is never going to get married. Everybody in the current Indian squad is single. There was one marriage that Poonam Rao that ended a few years ago, and it's very, very different from the men's who are diva hunting, I would like to say.
Wow.
And
Wow.
if you thought people went after perceptions, MS Dhoni himself allowed one shameless, one first half love story, one second half love story, and then coming back to life and winning one final and all. Please, then Mithali Raj will also allow it. One random Haryanvi fellow who came and said Mittu, and then that's why Mithali became Mittu or something
my God.
like that.
Fair enough.
Murali,
That's
there's
possible.
clearly one person from showbiz in this podcast, and it's very, very obvious who it is.
Or is this some wish fulfillment of some sort for Murli? I think this is what he wanted for Mithali, though Mithali herself doesn't want it.
This is how I'd like the story arc to be, but
We will do the review post, and you may be pretty stunned because I've watched enough Tamil, Telugu, Hindi cinema to know what these guys write.
I think the right question to ask is, have you acted in it for you to know this much?
No, thankfully,
10 days. We will know in 10 days.
Murli, Satyagopan, Ramesh.
I triggered a hornet's nest here. Let's keep moving.
But nice to see these movies coming out. The Indian women are also playing in the Commonwealth Games, where we only have the women playing. We don't have the men playing this time for some reason. And generally, post-pandemic...
We know the reason.
How it ended the last time.
Have they ever played Commonwealth Games since 98 when they first
98.
played?
That was it, I think. That was the last. No?
98 when South Africa, that's the only global tournament that South Africa ever won, where they beat Australia in the final. And India famously sent 2 squads, one to the Sahara Cup and one to the Commonwealth Games. Yeah.
There's also a random tournament, I don't know, it's called, I think, the Maccabia Games. No,
Sounds like
Maccabia Games, which is the Olympics for Jews, which I think South Africa have won.
Okay. all right,
They
yeah.
won cricket there. And,
There must be some food rules around this tournament which would have ensured nobody chokes. That's the only way South Africa could have won.
you know who the captain was? I will have to check this after the podcast, but I think the captain in the year they won was Adam Barker, the man who picked out Tendulkar from the blue.
Somehow, when you said like tournament for Jews, the name Dale Benkenstein popped up in my head. Like that was the first name in my head. Dale Benkenstein is a Commonwealth Games gold medalist, by the way, along with the likes of
Sean Pollock,
Derek Crooks, and so on.
Yeah, they beat Australia in the final. I remember that. Steve was Australia, who used to win everything back then. But coming back to women's cricket, interesting test match, 4-day test match between England and South Africa. As expected, ended in a rain-affected draw. I don't know what else they expected. Who stages a 4-day test match? I mean, is it even a test match, Rachna? What are your thoughts on this?
Oh my God.
This is like such a point of frustration. So if I was looking at the stats for the last 5 test matches, because it was just becoming a struggle to get information before that, but the last 5 have ended in a draw. It's again, there are always these one-off test matches that happen like once or max twice a year. It again just seems like, something namesake that you want the women's teams to have. And New Zealand have actually put out a statement that they don't believe or they don't think it's worth that the New Zealand women play test matches. I don't think the New Zealand team, as far as I know, have played a single test match in the last 10 years. Susie Bates, in her entire career, has not played a single test match.
Wow.
And so I sometimes I'm like, I really want to see more women's tests, but at the same time, I'm like, if it's just going to be, some sort of a checklist thing by ICC, is there really a point, especially when it always ends in a draw? That seems to be the trajectory. I mean, in this particular, England didn't even play their innings. It ended.
It's worth linking out to this. I think Rachna, you'd have read it for sure. The story was Ralph Nicholson about women's cricket being taken over by the ICC in 2005, and since then it's kind of been on a decline, especially Test cricket overall. Susie Bates not playing a Test match in her entire career is a travesty.
That's really shocking, man.
It's a travesty. Yeah, if it was a male cricketer, this would make like all kinds of headlines.
Yeah, quite disappointing. But on a more positive note, India has been touring Sri Lanka, and Sri Lanka won their first T20, I think, after 7 matches against India. We've been on a winning spree, and I think there's just so much that we need to, there's a lot of praise that should be given to the Sri Lankan team, especially during these times, and just in particular to the captain, Chamri Attapattu. I mean, she is quite the legend. When we talk about Mithali Raj's stability as a player, I think Chamri Attapattu has really been carrying the Sri Lanka team for a while. I was just looking at, on this date, 2 days ago, 5 years ago, Chamri Attapattu hit 177 not out against Australia. Australia ended up winning the match. Sri Lanka made 252 runs. It's been a challenging for them to, have a batting lineup, bowling lineup. They don't have the budget. And I don't know if you've seen the matches, but I was watching the usual player of the match at the end. I mean, every other country hands over a check. Sri Lanka hands over a bouquet of flowers. It is a sorry state of cricket there, and also for the country. So it's also quite amazing that they are having the series. We won the first ODI, but Sri Lanka have been putting on a fight. They took wickets. We have also, I don't think, been playing with complete intent. Yeah, let's see what happens in the next 2 matches.
I feel sad that they're having 4-day tests in England itself, man. If it rains for 3.5 days, how could you have a 4-day test in that wretched country? And that too for women who want to see results on the table. It's horrible. I remember the previous India test as well, right? That went super close. They were going to take the last wicket and it was super tight and all that. And I was like, maybe there are more days. It would actually be entertaining. Because if the argument is always like men can play more, it's powerful, strong or whatever. Test, you're not supposed to do that anyway. You're supposed to play time. Then women's and men's cricket should be just as interesting. Just give them that extra damn day. I never understood the...
Yeah, and it's not like their calendar is packed with other matches.
Exactly.
Right? Anyway, you're giving one-off test matches. So why wouldn't you make the 5th day possible? And we know this, right? Across the world, if a test match goes into the 5th day, gate receipts are actually... You don't need tickets, right? Like stadiums throw it open. So it's not a revenue reason. Like, why wouldn't you let them play for 5 days and chase a result? This is really sad.
Whatever I'm hearing is more of a broadcasting issue at this point. Broadcasters don't want to show the full 5 days, and they're seeing a lot more revenues from T20s, which is also understandable when it comes to creating excitement for a game that is relatively newer in a way, at least for the audience. But at least I'm seeing a lot of debate and a lot of bashing going on in the media on Twitter. So let's see if ICC take it on board and something changes.
That was a good test match though between England and South Africa, other than the rain. Nat Skiver and Marizanne Cap scoring big hundreds. England in a position to apply pressure and potentially win that game if not for rain. But a solid fight back from South Africa in the middle of all the rain, right, on day 4.
Definitely.
And Alice Davidson Richards, right? I think that was also an unbelievable innings, right?
Yeah, her century as well. Exactly.
So the most interesting thing about this test match, right? Like I read up a little bit before this podcast, the night watcher, and that's the term that Cricinfo used for her. To me, Sekou Kune scored 33 of 134 balls. It's good to see these terms now becoming mainstream, right? You have batters, you have night watchers, and hopefully you won't have third man in the future.
I think it's a third.
Deep third. The deep third.
Yeah, it's positive, slow but positive movements is all we could say.
One of the moments that I found very funny, one is probably the Instagram post by Catherine Brunt went viral when Nat Siver scored a century and Catherine Brunt posted, "I married her." And then I was watching, when in the South Africa innings when Nat Siver misfielded, Catherine Brunt shouted out, "I'll divorce you." And I was like, that is such a unique moment that you obviously will not see in men's cricket, but yeah, it was a very nice moment. And of course, Catherine Brunt, again, another heartbreak, announced her retirement, which I thought was a bit unexpected because she has still been playing. She's been on form. She was on form through the World Cup. But she also did say that, you should know when you need to go. And it was great to see her hand over the cap to newer players, in particular Izzy Wong, who's been, people have been noticing her for a while, and she took Laura Wolfhart's wicket, her first wicket, which I think is quite incredible. So yeah, another star to another person who I think is on the way to become something, and we should keep an eye out.
I think she bowls mid 70 miles an hour, right, which is really quick in women's cricket.
Yeah, apparently she's been trained in fast bowling from a very young age. I mean, she's very young, 19 or 20 or something. And England I've spoken about this in, I think, the first pod that I did, that, England have been really trying to push the boundaries when it comes to, training youngsters, young girls when it comes to bowling, because, biologically, anatomically, that's literally the only way in which you can develop that kind of strength if you start early. But yeah, she's hit 120, 125k. I remember seeing some balls during the 100 as well.
Brunt is actually only retired from long form, right? She is going to continue
only
playing.
Long form.
Yeah, it's
Only
and I agree with you. It's a surprising decision given there are very few test matches anyway. But she is in her mid-30s, so I guess that's
36 or 37.
Oh yeah, wrong side of 30. So yeah, I guess this is when players start taking these calls. But yeah, great career. Australia and Sri Lanka have played a test match out at Galle. You could call it a test match, but it ended in a little more than 2 days with Australia hammering the hapless Sri Lankans. It was one of those test matches where the stronger team did not bat for too long in their first innings and the weaker team folded for poor scores in both their innings. So the game ended pretty quickly. Does Sri Lanka come back from here in this series? They've generally fought Australia pretty well at home, but this didn't look good.
I have just one really short summary of the test match, which tells you everything you need to know about it, I think, because it was in Galle and obviously batters have a very difficult time there. The game ended with, in a hurry pretty much, by Travis Head taking a 4-for to roll Sri Lanka out for, was it 100 odd, I think, in the third innings?
Yeah.
113, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that tells you all you need to know. And Head was bowling with Nathan Lyon and Swepson both in the playing 11. Head comes in and picks up 4. The game ends at least half a day before it should have, right? So I thought that kind of tells you everything we need to know about it.
Head runs through the tail. Did anybody come up with that
Who was
headline?
it? It was there. I think somebody did during the World Cup in 2019. Head tail hold Australia together or something like that.
Yeah, easy pickings there. But there was one ball which I'm sure all of us saw the replay of. This was David Warner standing at leg slip. Who wants to describe what happened when that wicket fell?
I think Marnus Labuschagne described it beautifully, right? He's the only guy who sort of watches for things like this to happen and dutifully like retweets them, because he you know, if you see the video, it looks like the ball was going to go on to actually David Warner's hand because it spun so much. So he moves slightly to the right to pick up the ball. Everybody will follow the ball all the way through to Warner's hand. So Labuschagne,
Sadly, including Warner.
Warner. Labuschagne writes, "Please carefully watch the bail." Warner just folds like that. He's like, "Oh, what just happened?"
Yeah. So just to describe the action there, this was an off spinner. The ball went through the gate. Right-handed batsman hit the stumps, flicked the bails off. The ball then flew towards leg slip high, near a face height, and David Warner was trying to collect the ball, but the bail was on its own trajectory and it goes straight into David Warner's unmentionables, and the poor guy, just as he's about to catch the ball, doubles down. And thankfully, if the ball were a foot slower or later in getting to him, it would have probably hit his face as well, because his hands went down the moment this happened. But yeah, good chuckles, very chuckle-worthy. Lots of replays on Twitter. Somebody made a slow motion version of it as well. I think the most watched balls of that match.
I think bail of the century or something like that. Even in the India-England test match, I think it was today or yesterday that I think today Stokes got hit in the unmentionables, and apparently the stump mic got Kohli saying that "pehle ball sambhal le, fir baseball khelna" or something like that.
Baseball, it seems.
Yeah. The other thing about the Sri Lanka test is a lot of their more fancied batters didn't do well. Smith was obviously unlucky to be involved in a horrific looking run out. Uzi Khwaja did really well, but I think the others just didn't do well against the spin of Sri Lanka. The one exception was Cameron Green, who's already being hailed as their next big thing. And I didn't see the match live, but I did see the highlights, and at least from the highlights, it did appear that he batted really, really well. And you rarely see an Australian batsman doing well against spin with the usual subcontinental traits of wristy batting or going really forward, or attacking singles almost by pushing ball in boundaries, etc. So I think that's a really good sign for them. They've really been persisting with him, and to see him bat well in Galle of all places was a good sight to see. Yeah.
I think Khwaja is a really nice story, right? Like last time Australia went there, they got blanked 3-0. I think when was the debut series for Dhananjaya and Sandakan and all these guys, they got beaten 3-0. Khwaja was one of the villains of that, sort of the blanking they got. Now after 4 years, he's done really well in Pakistan. Now he's gone to Sri Lanka. He started doing well. Guy is, I think, 36 years old. So it's a nice sort of career arc over a 4 or 5 year period where he's been discarded and shunted up and down the order. So it's really, really good for him. I mean, obviously India is the big test, and I think that's next year for them when they come touring. So good story.
Yeah, what did they say about subcontinental batsmen, that they will only score runs in the subcontinent? Yeah, good for Khwaja. He doesn't have to live down.
I think this guy. This is Australian country blues sort of singer called Paul Kelly, who has a famous song on Bradman, and he was moved enough after Khwaja's exploits, I think in the Ashes or after Pakistan, that there is now a Paul Kelly song on Usman Khwaja as well.
Damn cool, man. Yeah, and Cameron Green scored 70 odd of 150 odd balls with 6 fours, and that was good enough to win him the man of the match. Like, I didn't watch the game either, but looking at that scorecard, that didn't seem like a man of the match worthy performance. So clearly, he must have batted really well in tough conditions. So good on him there.
Lion got 9.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, and he was
Surprising
overlooked.
me.
Yeah, and Lyon, by the way, started his career at Galle in 2011, if I remember.
Wicket of the first ball.
Yeah, wicket of the first ball. Yeah, I believe that was also Sean Marsh's test debut. This was back in the day when I was watching all cricket, I think. Yeah, and Lyon has had an interesting career, right? He used to be a groundsman at Adelaide before he started playing test cricket. And he's now second only to Vaughan in the list of spinners for Australia. So pretty cool.
Went past Kapil, I think this test he went past Kapil, I guess.
Wow. Yeah, the couples record has been, I think soon he'll be like 20th or 25th on that list, right? Every Tom, Dick and Harry has gone past him. Considering he extended his career for 3 years to get that record. It's pretty sad.
It's okay. Man had a good run for a good 15 years, I think, before Walsh.
Yeah. And since then, the barn doors were opened by Courtney. So going back to David Warner and the bail, right? I think what he should do is take that bail, burn it, put it into an urn and call it the Ashest, right? It's Warner, Ashest. Sorry, that didn't make any sense, but yeah, neither did that replay. Right, we've gone on and on today on episode 26 of Bits and Pieces. We'll end it in time to go back and catch the last session of India versus England. The game is quite interestingly poised at the moment with India 27-1 in a very handy lead. Shubman Gill is gone, but 159 runs ahead, and maybe that's enough to force a win in the remaining time. Hopefully rain relents. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week with another rotating cast of panelists, and in the meantime, do listen to us, ask your friends to listen to us, hit like, share, subscribe, do your thing so that we can keep bringing this podcast to you free of cost, without any ads, ad free and free. All the good stuff. Say bye, guys.
Bye.
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 All right. Thank you. See you next week. Bye-bye.